My name is Gwendolyn Hampton-VanSant, and as you've heard, I'm co-founding director and CEO of Multicultural Bridge, which you will hear more about a little later. Just recently completing my 3-year term as chair, I served as an appointed state official as a Berkshire County Commissioner on the status of women. I am also the Director of Equity and Inclusion at my alma mater, Bard College at Simon's Rock, right here in Great Barrington. I came to the Berkshires at age 15 to begin my BA career at Simon's Rock with a W.B. Du Bois Scholarship. It began a journey that I am still on today. I've come to see myself as a social entrepreneur, using the vehicle of a nonprofit to improve upon and build our human connection and to disrupt monopolies and structural barriers. My signature strengths drive my work. Positive psychologists tell me through the VIA Character Institute that I am creative, I have perspective, I exercise judgment, I commit to honesty and authenticity, and I am kind. Beginning my adult life here in the Berkshires at age 20 with 2 children, a college degree in languages and literature, my intellect and my gut, and a general faith that something existed larger than our individual human existence. Many of you in here know a little bit about Bridge, so I'm going to talk to you about my most primary role. I consider myself first and foremost the mother of diversity by way of my children. My 4 children, each beautiful in their own right, live with many markers of social and cultural diversity. My 2 younger children, biracial, one living with a chronic autoimmune disease, and moving on to my older daughter who lives with autism and has 2 vocational certificates in culinary and animal care from Berkshire Humane Society and BCC, along with her high school degree. This is significant to me because at age 20, I was told that she would never walk or talk. Her and my original prognosis lasted well into elementary school. And finally, my older son, who's returned from college to serve the Berkshire youth, and he has lived his life with chronic asthma and has also lived a non-binary gender identity, emerging as early as age 2. Mother of diversity, right? Today, and over the last 5 to 10 years, autism and non-binary gender identity have much more medical, social, and political support than they did 20 years ago. And it was up to me, a single mom, to create a path where my children of color could thrive right here in the Berkshires. Through Multicultural Bridge conversations, dialogues, and trainings, I see individuals in this community connect more and more to one another and to their own humanity, which cultivates a safer and more loving community for them and for my family. This is the essence of our purpose and vision, a thriving, integrated community. Richard Heckler Straussy says, "True learning is the ability to decide upon change and then follow through with clear mind and steady purpose. True learning is the ability to take action." Let me tell you a little bit more about Multicultural Bridge, a small but mighty organization. It was co-founded by me, Marta Bordone, and Bob Norris in the summer and fall of 2007, opening our doors in Great Barrington that September and being incorporated as a nonprofit the following June of 2008. We are a minority and women-run organization run by part-time employees on a minuscule budget, really weaving straw into gold on a weekly basis. Our services, certified by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, are translation, interpretation, training, education, and multicultural awareness. We've been cited in textbooks, earned recognition for nonprofit impact in the Berkshires, and received citations from our local delegates. Bridge was born out of a vision Marta and I shared of helping the new immigrant community in the Berkshires. In 2002 to 2007, our immigrant population had doubled, and they were mainly Latinos increasing that population. And outside of the elderly population, this was the only growing population of the Berkshires, second in proportion only to Worcester and then Boston. And as the census shows still, we see an increase in Latino, Asian, and African American populations. One day I was interpreting at a medical clinic, helping a Latina woman with her paperwork. There was an older white lady that was grumbling, but respectfully I was not interfering, presuming there was a special need of some kind, and me being me, I did not want to judge or have the perception of judging. Then something surprising happened. She threw the clipboard towards us on the ground. I asked her why, and she quickly stated that it was unfair that a newcomer would get the help and she couldn't. She had dropped out of school to work, and she had never learned to read, and was finding it difficult through the stack of paperwork one fills out at a medical appointment. She hadn't had medical care in over 10 years. That moment stopped me in my tracks. Her story stopped me in my tracks. I had been thinking more and more about Bridge, about its purpose through the translation of school documents, interpreting medical visits, and this was an informative moment. Marta and I were looking for an official vehicle to support the individuals we were supporting. Generally, I had found that right here in the Berkshires, we had human trafficking and domestic violence in proportions I did not realize. The poverty in this county outweighs the beauty, access to arts, and privilege. So I realized this dream agency we were creating was for anyone that needed support and education. Within a year of founding the organization, I was at a multicultural symposium in Boston and encountered the Department of Justice Community Relations Service. And after hearing how they support communities nationwide after a case like Rodney King or Sandra Bland, I asked what we could do proactively and then began our racial justice work. As an African American professional woman, I knew we needed a mechanism to address the barriers that I had encountered in my career and personal life here, as well as the barriers in the rapidly growing immigrant population. Our founding mission is to catalyze change, transform cultures, and to foster equity and access in order to integrate the outsiders. The outsiders are those excluded by social, interpersonal, systemic, and cultural barriers. We promote mutual respect and understanding through training, fellowship, education, and advocacy. Bridge was first envisioned as a cultural broker between the newcomer, or the woman that couldn't read, and the agencies and institutions that wanted to serve. Bridging the gap for individuals, providing tools for cross-cultural communication for agencies and providers, and we still do that, providing education in all forms. And now in this climate, this election season, attacking women, immigrants, and African Americans, this violent summer captured on social media as an attack on the African American male population, this increasing attack that is just igniting fear. The stakes are higher, and so the intention of the multicultural bridge work is sharpening. We have the data. The disparities in health, income, and assets are significant. The poverty rate of those incarcerated is prevalent. The ethnic makeup of the Berkshire dropouts and suspensions is remarkably brown, and also comprised of a disproportionate number of students with special needs. The funny thing is we want numbers to see and believe, but we actually already know. We know our bias can be measured. We have nothing to deny or argue. We need to stand for equity and justice. I believe, as Bell Hooks, a Black feminist thinker and writer, remarked, education is a transformative path. And if we each commit to our own self-learning and growth and share that outward, we, our families, communities, and workplace will begin to thrive. If each of us reaches out to make connection with someone not like us, then we grow and learn together. Broaden and Build is a positive psychology practice to cultivate happiness towards thriving individuals and teams, pioneered by Dr. Barbara Fredrickson. Identify the positive emotions and use them to build. The same can apply here. One of the most vital ways that we sustain ourselves is by building communities of resistance, places where we know we're not alone, says Bell Hooks. So now I've shared a little of my story and a little of the adventure that is Multicultural Bridge, and now I turn to you in the audience. Normally I'm interacting, so I'm going to ask some questions, and I hope you take the time to reflect. This story, my story in Bridges, is one that challenges many cultural and fixed mindsets. A fixed mindset told me my daughter would never develop and be as independent as witty as she is today. Not true. Having 2 children as an African American woman before age 20, emancipated minor at age 16, meant to most that my future and my children's was bleak. Not true. Starting a nonprofit to combat diversity and racism issues in our rural area at the point of the economic downturn in 2008 meant failure for a nonprofit. Not true. Challenging, hard, painful at times, isolating, yes, but not impossible. Empowering. A growth mindset would allow for the future path that I was able to carve out for my children and for the impact Bridge has been able to have on our Berkshire community. Where do we find ourselves or those around us acting out of a fixed mindset? What would happen if we shifted our lens? We have not achieved racial equity. We have not stopped our community from needing to self-medicate to the point of an opiate epidemic in our community. We have not prevented our middle schoolers feeling the urge to smoke pot, have sex, and drink alcohol by age 13, impacting their brain development. And we have not eliminated medical disparities or ended the pipeline for school to prison for our young, brown, and poor children. Well, not yet, in the words of Dr. Carol Dweck, pioneer of the growth mindset. We need to challenge cultural and color blindness in our everyday existence. I'm asking that each of you lean in with me for a moment, because if I've shared, my humanity is connected with yours. Take a moment to reflect on color blindness. What value does that hold for you? We don't want to be judged on the color of our skin, as Reverend Dr. King said, and today I actually hear that from almost as many people of color as white people today. None of us want to be judged in that way. But that desire to not be judged on the color of your skin does not condone blindness. It requires sharp vision. African Americans and other brown-skinned individuals deserve more of an opportunity than being brown in America, specifically the US, provides us. The wage gap persists even though women in the US are far more educated. Over a 40-year career, white women will earn $400,000 less than their white male counterpart. And an African American woman, over $1 million less. We have to recognize the cultural context in which we live, in which individuals different from us live. Lean in. In what ways are you blind to cultural contexts of folks different from you here in the Berkshires? What do you want to learn more about? I will give you an example. We have a policy that undocumented farm workers can live on farms and work. The reason is that we're not raising the typical US-born child to be a farmer, but we need to support our farms, and we should all be thinking about locally sourced food. These workers cannot get licenses, go to doctor's appointments, see their children's recitals, buy a pack of gum at the corner market without fear of deportation. We allow them to work only. They are only by law safe on the farm. Now, one perspective is they may be finding a quality of life that allows them and their children's safety that we cannot imagine living without, and they will take each day they can get. And then the other perspective, my perspective, is how reminiscent this is of modern-day slave labor that is sanctioned by the government. The government could choose to advocate for immigration reform, since our economy depends on this immigrant workforce. The USDA farmers ran a campaign a few years ago to find farm workers, and again, no one volunteered. We haven't been raising our children to work the land in the US. The responsibility is for us to learn more about what precludes workers from certain countries to get the legal status that other immigrants would be automatically granted, despite our need for their labor. I share this story to create the impact of understanding the layers of cultural context of a farmer's needs, an immigrant's quality of life and right to human safety and dignity, an immigrant who serves our economy, and the power that the public advocacy by everyday residents and our delegates might have in deconstructing this one structural barrier. My next important question, lean in with me. What roles define you socially and personally? I've shared mine today as a mother and a social entrepreneur. Examine the dynamics of power and privilege that you have within your roles and the impact that has on others. How can you influence for the positive? Take ownership of your power, your privilege, and the impact, and craft an outcome that you desire to see. In my younger years, my power was my youth, my resilience, my faith, and my education and intellect. So it wasn't that I had nothing. In fact, I had everything I needed at the time. Now my privilege is the continued education that I pursued and finding role models and mentors and relationships that have helped me along the way. I have to say, some have helped me directly and some rather indirectly. Telling me I couldn't or my kids couldn't was and still is a big motivator. These relationships helped me form the next phases of my life. I saw my story in Maya Angelou, Audre Lorde, and even so far back as Sojourner Truth, W.B. Du Bois, and Mum Bet. And I understand my experience through their poetry, their teachings, and life stories. What privilege do you have, and what can you influence? Earlier, I mentioned cultural humility. You just began practicing it, and it takes grit. Grit is deliberate practice, another positive psychology framework led by Angela Duckworth. You showed up today because you wanted to learn and be inspired and make connection. These are the first steps to cultural humility. It takes the deliberate practice of an athlete or a pianist to keep up the racial and social justice required. Self-care, training, education, and practice. To practice cultural humility, you must learn the cultural context and real history behind the disparity or difference. You must become aware of social identities and biases that you possess, whether you choose them or not. And third, consider the impact that might have on others. And with that intention focus, you can begin to shift the paradigms and structures that exist. We will all encounter barriers or fail, and sometimes fail miserably or see things we don't want to see. What will we learn from the mistakes or barriers? How will we rebuild, work around and through, repair and restore? How will we hold ourselves accountable and do something different next time? As we help, support, advocate, and educate, we must start with our own self-awareness and commitment to ongoing self-education and change. A rule of cultural competence is treat others how they would like to be treated. This requires conversation and relationship. Our golden rule offers us a starting point of treating others how we would like to be treated, and we need to continue and build from there. How do you do that? Ask questions, listen carefully, and actively. So thank you. I leave with a few charges. 1, practice cultural humility every day. Remember, it's deliberate practice. 2, make human connection with the story that is outside of your context or the individual outside of your sphere. 3, make a commitment to have a positive impact. What one small thing will you do tomorrow and the next day? Take the Harvard implicit bias test. Read Jim Crow and the New Reconstruction. And when you hear negativity bias against individuals or cultural groups, or witness everyday racism, lean in to understand that point of view and begin a dialogue. So borrowing from the Brahma Kumari's tradition, tolerance is the capacity to make space for individuals in their cultural context. So practice the virtue of tolerance. It is not tolerating a degree of pain or suffering. It is stepping to the side to have another join in beside you. You indeed may have to give something up and the gain could be much greater. Ernest Hemingway says, the best people possess a feeling of beauty, the courage to take risks, the discipline to tell the truth, the capacity for sacrifice. Ironically, their virtues make them vulnerable. I invite you to lean in and take those risks with me. Thank you.